Is your toddler running or are they waddling? And what is the difference? Today, we're going to be breaking down everything that all parents need to know about running, how to spot the difference between running and waddling, what we really are wanting to encourage our children in, and how to build these really foundational skills that open up a doorway for so much new play and exploration and development scaffolding. So let's get started. Running is just such a glorious milestone for young children. It's kind of synonymous with shrieks of laughter and joy, and it just is that thing that really captures childhood, a child running and laughing with absolute joy. In therapy, when I see a child that has reached the milestone of walking within a normal age appropriate expectation, but they don't seem to, by age 2 or around age 2, be progressing into running, there's a lot of foundational skills that we start to look at and unpack, and we really break down the difference between the waddling and the running. The biggest thing that I think is most relevant for us to ask just right off the bat before we start looking at the developmental aspects is how much opportunity our children have for running. There's like this big shift that happens in the life of a young child when they are kind of housebound, or they move from crawling to then standing up, and you're still kind of always with them because you don't want them to get scratched or fall on something, or they're falling backwards as they're standing, and then they start walking, and now you have shoes on, and now it's like suddenly we're not really as housebound. We're like good to go and get out the house and go exploring, and that is when we want running to really start taking flight. But in this modern world that we live in, especially post-pandemic, I think that there's a lot of resistance to take that big step of getting out. See, our children actually need 3 hours of movement a day once they're at that stage of needing to run. So once we hit year 1 and onwards, we're wanting our children to have 3 hours of movement. And yes, all that pottering around that they do at home, that standing up, sitting down, like moving puzzle pieces, and all that movement that they do just naturally as they're at home is great. But we also want to be getting them into movement rhythms that are firstly developing all that scaffolding for something like running, but is also building up their heart muscles, because we want our children to have good endurance and good, strong, healthy hearts. And running really is the key within that equation. Running is also really critical and integral within many of the social types of play that children do in those toddler to preschool years. So if you think about ball games, catches, chasing each other, climbing up different slides and different jungle gym equipment and running around, all of this really needs our children to be able to propel their bodies forward in a fast motion to keep up with their friends, and also to manage the balance that they have to do all of those activities. It's not just about, again, like that athletic skill, but it's about opening up the door for this type of social play. And then, as I said before, also for that balance skills. Balance is a critical skill for young children to develop. They really start developing it when they start sitting up, and kind of not falling to the side. That may look like something so simple on the outside, but as a therapist, when we see that those skills weren't developed, it actually has this huge ripple effect across development, because our children don't really have a center of gravity, so all movement becomes a little bit more difficult. So even as we are progressing, past obviously sitting up, we're now onto the stage of running. We want to give our children as much opportunity as we can to be practicing out those balance and coordination skills that happen during running. So what is waddling and what is running, and what's really the difference? Basically, we see young children as they start to learn to walk. The first thing that they do is that kind of side walking, and it's the same for running. Often we see that the easiest version of running is kind of having our legs quite far apart and just moving them in slight forward motion, but it's more like a side to side movement that your child is doing. So I would call that waddling. And then when they have developed that wobbling, because it is actually them learning to find that center of gravity and build that coordination. So they might waddle for a couple of months, maybe 1 or 2, and then they're going to start moving into legs more together, forward propelling their legs. And of course, this is something that we'll see it still in quite a toddlerish way with our young children. They'll still look like just, super adorable and edible as they're doing their forward propelled running. And as a child grows, like as they become 5, 6, 7, until even into the teen years, that running becomes a lot more graceful. The amount, like the size of the step that they're taking within a run is much bigger and much more coordinated, and obviously a lot faster. So it's not like a one and done skill. It does continue to develop, but around this time, around like 18 months to 2 years, or I would say around like 3 to 6 months after they are an established walker, so not just cruising and not just first steps, but after they've been really walking for 3 to 6 months, we want to see that progresses into more of a run. Today, I want to share with you 3 tips that you can be using to support your child in learning to run. And now this is not just for children that you are concerned about or you feel like they've been waddling for too long or anything. This is for typically developing children as well. These are tips that are just really great for all children. The first one is to just master walking, to give our children lots and lots of time to be walking, and to try and allow for the space and the environment that they are doing walking in a way that is challenging that walking. So if you think about walking, I know that sounds really strange, but if you think about walking indoors in your house, it's a flat surface. It's, maybe there's some carpet, some tile, some wood, but generally it's kind of like the same texture, the same kind of surface that you're walking on. If you go outside, even to a road that is tarred, there's a little bit more like bumps and things that are on the road that you need to avoid. Then if you go on a nature walk, there's rocks, there's sticks, there's an incline, there's a decline, there's a lot more variation in the way that we're walking. And then similarly, if we're walking with shoes on, it's a different experience to, say, walking on grass or on a kind of turf surface without shoes on, because that is, again, developing our foot muscles in a different way. We're requiring a lot of stabilization. We're getting a lot of sensory input. So we want to basically, in this time that our children are now established walkers, really be giving them opportunity to walk not just indoors, but getting that like full breadth of experience when it comes to walking. So for your family, this might mean doing some short strolls around the block, maybe once or twice a day, just going for a little loop of a walk. It might be going for nature walks. Maybe this isn't something you can do every day, but maybe it's something you can build in as a regular feature on your weekends. It might be, even if you are indoors, really like playing games with your child. You can do catch, which is with walking, as your child's establishing walking. You can play rolling of softballs that they would have to walk after. My kids also loved searching for things around the house. So even it was like to take an object and hide it somewhere, and then they would go look for it, which again is like just inviting a lot more of that active walking. As we mentioned before, the part of running that is so critical is that it does open the door for so much new social experience and so much new play. And that is also one of the tools that we can use to support our children in this, by just building in play ideas and play games that naturally have running incorporated into them. So if you think about ball games, you can do this again by rolling softballs on your floor in your home. You can do ball games outside where you're throwing the ball, they're catching it, or going to fetch it and then bringing it back to you. You can do that with a frisbee as well. One of the things that my kids loved with running was to kind of build a kind of nest or a soft surface. You can do this with bean bags or mattresses or just duvets and pillows, and let them have like a run up and then a dive onto that soft surface. There'll be lots of giggling involved, and it's a great way to get that like run up practice going for them. We also have loved chasing birds when we're outdoors. I mean, often they're like, the birds have long gone by the time they actually get to that point, but it gives them kind of a motivation to propel themselves forward. And then of course, just chasing or catches. This is so fun. This is so fun for us. It also gets our heart racing, and then so fun for our children. As I said before, running really develops our children's balance skills, but it's kind of like one of those means to an end things when it comes to balance, because balance is something that our children also need to be able to run. So as we are supporting them from that, step from being a walker or a waddler into really running, we want to give them lots of opportunities to test out their balance skills, not only in the activity of running. So some of the ways that you can be doing this are by firstly also practicing jumping. Jumping definitely works on balance skills. You can do this by having kind of circles that children jump onto, like stepping stones. I'll link some below that I really like. Another way that we like to do this is by playing with a balance board. There is the wobble that people really like. There are also some other versions of balance boards that are great. So again, I'll link those all below. Stairs are a perfect way to be practicing balance skills. And again, it's another skill that our children are alongside running, developing at this age. So we want to give them, even if you don't live by stairs, go and find some on your next walk. Like giving children time to practice stairs. And it does take slow and it feels a little bit scary in the beginning because you're worried if they can fall, but just make sure that you're like fully present and able to catch them if needed. Of course, that there's a handrail or your hand that they're holding onto, but giving children stair practice time is very, very good. And then we want to be giving them lots of time to also be walking on those uneven surfaces like we talked about. So going on those nature walks, going on little hills and little declines. If you have started trying to get child-led walks going in your family and you feel like you always end up holding your kid in the first 5 minutes and that the actual walking doesn't get done and you just get a sore back from it, I've got a video that is just for you. So go and check that out. It's on your screen now. I'll see you over there.